Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Take 5, the podcast where we pick a cinema legend, take 5 of their films to showcase their excellence and range. My name is Austin Ligger.
My name is Ray Martindale.
And this is our third week to showcase the films of Jimmy Stewart. Previously, we have covered The Philadelphia Story and It's a Wonderful Life. This week, we're going into his westerns with the Anthony Mann film Winchester 73. And we are honored to have a western expert here with us. We have Johnny Boggs. Johnny Boggs is the 6-time Spur Award winner. He is the winner of the Western Heritage Wrangler Award. He is the author of numerous books, including Camp Ford, Hard Winter, and West Texas Kill. His most recent novel is Return to Red River, a sequel to the novel that was adapted as the classic Howard Hawks' John Wayne movie. Johnny, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Talking about one of my favorite movies.
Oh, that's fantastic. This is one that I happened to catch truly out of the blue. TCM was doing a weekend of Anthony Mann. I'd never heard of him before, and I was blown away by this and The Naked Spur. Johnny, what to you separates an Anthony Mann film from other westerns?
You know, Anthony Mann, he gave an interview shortly before he died. He was a director who started out doing film noir, and then he moved to westerns, did a number of those, mainly with Jimmy Stewart. And then after that, he got into the epics, and then he died in the 1960s of a heart attack. But he was saying that his western, he never thought of himself as like John Ford, making a movie about a hero. He always said that he did movies about a person with a job to do, and at the end of the job, he's pretty much exhausted. And if you see, especially the two best of the Mann Stewart movies, which are Winchester 73 and Naked Spur, that's exactly how those characters wind up. They're just totally exhausted from the work they've had to do.
Absolutely. And the story of this movie is we're basically following this gun. Jimmy Stewart plays Lynn McAdam, who is this tough guy. He's in town. He wins a contest to win this fantastic Winchester rifle. And the gun is stolen from him by his rival, which is then taken from him after he loses in gambling and etc. as it goes to about maybe 3-4 motors.
The gun is almost its own sort of character in the film. I mean, I think that's probably not hard to come to that conclusion when you look at the title of it, but it's all set up so well. I mean, the way the gun is sort of revered earlier in the film, and you sort of see the contest about how, you know, you shoot the best shooter in town. Oh, by the way, Wyatt Earp cameo. The best shooter in town wins the Winchester, and you set up with that, and then these two rivals. You don't know how they relate to each other yet, but they both end up getting in the finals of the shooting contest in one of really remarkable scene. It's really interesting. Really sets the mood for the movie. One thing that I loved is sort of this rival he's going to be going up against the entire film. Is the first time they run into each other, they reach for their guns. They don't have them. That I thought was so brilliant because it's a way of working in exposition that'll never feel forced. It's just like, oh yeah, there's a guy, I gotta kill him. And then it's like, okay, now I'm intrigued. What's their history? What's their story? What's going on here? And I just thought that worked so well. And you sort of, from there, you get breadcrumbs of their story all the way through till the end. So it's those two as sort of the main characters, and then of course the rifle itself. So.
And it's so interesting. I'm glad we're watching this one because the previous two Jimmy Stewart movies are much more of the typical Jimmy Stewart performance that you think of when you think of him. When I started watching this movie again, I forgot just how immediately tough he is. And that's true for this and The Naked Spur.
Well, it's true, but you also realize this is Jimmy Stewart after World War II.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
He's a bomber pilot during the war, pretty much the entire war. And what you see here is this intensity that you did not see before World War II. So he's got all this baggage that he took from flying bomber missions. You know, he's shot at, he's almost shot down a few times, he's almost killed a few times. So he comes back from the war, he's totally changed. And even if you read some biographies of Jimmy, the war definitely affected him, and it certainly affected his performance. And what you see, especially when he's taking Dan Duryea, who plays one of the bad guys in this movie, is practically making him eat this bar in Tascosa, Texas. I mean, you see this rage and this anger and this build-up intensity that he just amazes me. You see it a little bit, I think, in It's a Wonderful Life, which I always say, really not a Christmas movie. That's a very intense, mean character. But it really comes to to shape in Winchester 73.
Yeah, it sort of emotes itself, and It's a Wonderful Life is sort of like angsty and bitterness, right? It sort of formulates that way, and this is more rough and anger. Yeah, and I thought that was interesting about Jimmy too, because he is someone that we always think about as being so mild mannered or sweet or good natured, but then. Yeah, I remember my father telling me when I was, very young, telling me about how, he flew bomber missions in World War II. And actually, I believe he is the highest ranking official ever to have been like an actor, but other than Ronald Reagan, of course, who was the president of the United States. So it is pretty interesting. And I think his son was killed in Vietnam too, I believe.
Right.
Yeah. True.
So.
And Jimmy's a much better actor than Ronald Reagan.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I can agree with that.
And something else also so kind of strikingly different between this and the bitterness he has in It's a Wonderful Life is that whenever people are talking about him to himself, he almost seems not to hear it. Like, it's not really like the humility he has in different kind of things where it's kind of all shucks. It completely does not faze him at all in a true cowboy sense, in a way. Jimmy Stewart was a fantastic Western actor. He was in these, but also he was in The Man Shot Liberty Valance with John Ford and a couple earlier in his career. What do you think, Johnny, as our Western expert, how does he approach the genre, you think?
Well, he brought himself into this genre. I mean, he's probably not what you would think of as a typical Western hero, but especially if you've seen his other roles, which he's always phenomenal in, like Harvey or The Philadelphia Story. His first Westerns, actually, 1939, Destry Rides Again. And I always find it interesting to compare him. It was basically a tongue-in-cheek, kind of a comedy. He's the everyman who's really out of his element in the Wild West. And then you bring him into Winchester 73, and he just totally he talked about the hat, and he wore the same hat pretty much in all of his Westerns, especially the Mann Westerns. And he said, he just poured, coffee all over the brim.
Oh, it's so gross.
Yeah, yeah, it beats it up and stuff like that. But he really, he fit that character. He fit that role. I think for all I know, he wore that wardrobe night and day just to get in the character. Kind of like Henry Fonda, they said he did in Once Upon
a Time in the West?
No, before that, in 43, the Oxbow incident.
Oh, okay.
So he just became part of that. So the wardrobe fits him, and he's just, he's perfect. He's absolutely perfect. Phenomenal actor. The other thing I liked about Jimmy Stewart was he said especially after World War II, he wanted to try different roles. He didn't want to play the same character over and over again. So he's going from Lynn McAdam and Winchester 73 to Elwood P. Dowd, one of my favorites.
That's my favorite performance is. I just love that so much.
That's such a great play, and he is Elwood P. Dowd.
Mm-hmm.
To Glenn Miller and the Glenn Miller Story, or Monty Stratton and the Stratton Story. I mean, he just did all these different kind of roles, and then he gets into Hitchcock.
Yep.
Amazing actor, just a totally committed actor. I think he's one of the actors that he's kind of like John Wayne, I think, in a lot of ways, where you watch him, and even if the movie's not that good, you can't take your eyes off him.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a commanding presence. He's a better actor than John Wayne, too.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it was so interesting because this movie, I had not seen it in several years. I was watching it again. I knew the plot. I couldn't remember exactly, if we're going to see enough of Jimmy Stewart, because we're going to be following the gun.
Right.
But it's so brilliant the way that he kind of just keeps chasing the gun. And even though there's so many characters in this movie, it always feels like his story, partly because of the presence that Jimmy Stewart puts into it.
Yeah, it's not actually unlike Harvey in that way. He's actually not in Harvey all that much.
That's true.
It's just that it feels like he's always there. He's always present there, but there's a lot focused on the characters sort of around him, which you sort of have here. Johnny, I noticed you mentioned that this is one of your favorite westerns. I was curious, what about this movie specifically? I have a weakness for westerns, as Austin knows. Now I don't pretend to know. And by weakness, I mean it's immediately better than what it probably really is, because I just love the genre so much.
Right.
I was the one guy a few years ago saying the True Grit remake should have won Best Picture, but I just immediately endeared to them. But what about it specifically about this movie for you sort of puts it over the top?
I think a number of things. First of all, Anthony Mann was a solid director, and this has a very noirish element to it. And I'm a big fan of film noir too. And you get the story of you're basically following a gun, and it goes through various characters. But Jimmy Stewart's always, he's basically after the gun, which is stolen from him.
Yes,
he's got a reason. He's not actually after the gun. He's after the guy that first steals the gun from him, which is played by Stephen McNally. To my mind, The Naked Spur is a better movie. It's a little more in depth, a little more intense. It's a little more character driven. But if I got my choice between watching The Naked Spur and Winchester 73, I'll probably pick Winchester 73. I just can follow that movie over and over and over again. And the supporting cast is just great in this one. You got Stephen McNally as the lead bad guy. Millard Mitchell, I always thought was an underrated character actor, playing Jimmy's good companion, loyal companion.
Oh, he's fantastic in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Charles Drake, not a very good actor, but he's okay in this as his supporting part. And then you get a bunch of up-and-coming actors that you might not even recognize.
It was
Tony
crazy.
Curtis,
yeah, that's what I was right about to say. Yeah, I'm like watching the film, because this was my first time having seen the film. And I'm literally like, what, is that Tony Curtis? And then he has like one line in the film, I think. Obviously,
it's not much. Yeah,
he picks up the gun and hands it off to somebody.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, that is Tony Curtis. I'm not seeing things. So that was really funny.
We also have to mention Rock Hudson's in this film.
Yeah, Rock Hudson's in this film, of course.
And they're Universal. They're on the Universal payroll, so they're just brought in to fill these parts. But it's kind of fun to see them and say, "Oh, wait a minute."
We were talking about this too. This is a film I don't think would be made today. I don't know. It just seems. I wonder about the cultural sensitivity that might exist now that certainly people weren't thinking about in 1950.
One of the good things is it's actually historically correct. When they ride into Dodge City, they have to give up their side guns. Their handguns are turned. And I always say, it was a whole lot harder to carry a gun in Dodge City and Tombstone and many of the cattle towns than it is to carry in a major city today. You didn't do it. The gunfight at the OK Corral is actually an arrest gone bad, but they're trying to arrest these people for violating the firearms incident. So there were a lot tougher gun control laws in the West, even though what we see in the Western movies don't always portray that. But it does a little bit in Winchester 73. It's one of the first ones that does that, in which you come in and check your guns, boys. We don't allow firearms in Dodge City.
Is there earlier iterations of Wyatt Earp in film than this? I mean, I'm sure there are.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
This is one of the most fun Wyatt Earps, but he's played by name in Frontier Marshal with Randolph Scott, and then My Darling Clementine with Henry Fonda. So Wyatt Earp was a name by this point.
He was in a lot. Yeah, somebody was curious about.
No one's played him like Will Gears, this down-home kind of folksy guy who's really, really good with a gun.
Exactly. Yeah. He sounded more like a guy I wanted to have beers with than other iterations of Wyatt Earp. Sorry, Austin, were you about to say something?
No. It's great. I love him in this. And it's always so curious to me. I was always so fascinated looking at the Winchester as the pivot point throughout this world. Because unlike a bag of money or even maybe a badge that you're passing around, this is a weapon, and it's never forgotten as a weapon. And that's what made it so, this was a morally different Western landscape than I've seen in so many Westerns of this time. Because you're getting people fighting and killing over a weapon to make killing even faster. Right. You know what I mean? It brought, even with Jimmy Stewart, our hero, we don't know why he's doing things he's doing, and he makes it such a immediately morally fascinating character. Johnny, when you write your stories, how do you kind of start to craft the intent, the goal for the character, and how much how's morality really affect that for you?
I think that morality is I'm writing in the 21st century. I mean, it's a lot different than when you were writing in the 1940s. Say, Westerns were a lot more driven for entertainment. There wasn't a whole lot of thought to historical accuracy. or time or period or even place. And now I think it's a lot different there. And I'm writing about people. I always say, a lot of times I'm writing historical westerns, so I'm writing about real people. So I'm writing about real people. I'm just trying to make them as human as possible. And they've got their own baggage and their own goals. And I try not to write so much about white hats and black hats, but people with a strong vision of what's right and what's wrong. And often those visions collide and cause some real bad stuff to happen. And I think you see a little bit of that in Winchester 73. I mean, they're starting off, they're shooting at targets. That's what all the guns are for, shooting at targets. And then it just quickly morphs and they're shooting at each other.
Yeah, that's an interesting, because it ends up being to me it's more affecting the twist in the story here, which is it's kind of amazing I didn't see this coming. I mean, obviously I knew that the characters had a history, but for some reason I didn't get. I mean, I got that he killed his dad because you get these little bits by bits, and then you find out the two people at the end are brothers. Right. And I didn't actually see that coming, but it isn't perhaps as grandiose as so many westerns, but there was something so charming about how personal the story between the two brothers is, particularly when it comes to these two people are both capable gunfighters. So when they go head to head, which brother can kill the other brother? Which one's actually the best? And it just kept it really, really personal. It wasn't as certainly as like bombastic as like a Sergio Leone film. Like it was very, very, very simple. And I just found it really charming when it needed to be, and also gritty in a way that felt more real. I guess is a way to describe it. But in particular, in this final gunfight in the end, when the two brothers are shooting at each other, this is one of the most fantastic gunfights. Like, the ricochets are absolutely incredible, and they're happening like inches away from their face. And it just keeps going and going and going. And it's so, I just thought that was so awesome. I don't know. I'm looking for better verbiage, but that's the only way I'm able to come up with it.
No, it's, when I was going back to this scene, I knew instantly what the landscape looked like. To me, I don't even know how to describe it, but Anthony Mann, the way he finds his places to film in, unlike maybe a John Ford film where it's like the most majestic and interestingly beautiful thing you've ever seen, this just feels like almost a strange piece of nature that Mann is like also walking alongside. I mean, they're actually these giant rocks.
Yeah, this is bizarre rock formation, right there. And it starts off. I mean, the verticality of it is interesting because it starts out they're shooting at each other back and forth, but they're also shooting on each other in different planes. Like the brother starts above him, so he's got like the high ground, and it's all done very tactfully. They're waiting until the bullets run out, and once the bullets run out, then I advance, and then I retreat, and then I go back. Like it's just, I don't know. I was just really into the story, and when it comes to a head and it ends, and Jimmy Stewart comes out the victor, it's just done. It's not glamorous or anything. It's just he was there 1 minute and he's dead the next.
And then he's totally exhausted and worn out. And you always want, okay, what's he going to do now? I mean, he's spent years now chasing his brother, and where does the movie go from there? I mean, does he ever recover and stuff like that? And you get a little bit of that in The Naked Spur, too, at the end of that movie, where he's totally, spent. He's exhausted. He's worn out. But the violence here is pretty amazing for its time. And this is another thing I think between World War II and after the war, the early movies, especially the early westerns, really didn't know how to treat the violence. They didn't know how to do a shootout properly, in my mind. I mean, look at some of the early classic movies, Dodge City, and the movies that kind of revamped the westerns. Even Destry Rides Again, Stagecoach. I mean, the gunfights are really kind of lame. But then you get into after World War II, and especially in Winchester 73, which kind of reinvigorated the Western. It reinvigorated Jimmy Stewart's career. It also reinvigorated the Western. They became a lot more adult, and they approached violence with a whole lot of different morality to it. It's fairly intense, and it's kind of savage.
Yeah, that's the interesting way of putting it, because normally, every time, and just for my point of reference, because I haven't seen nearly as many westerns as you have, obviously, but usually when I see the hero, when I see Clint Eastwood enter a gunfight, I'm typically, my money's on Clint. Like I think he's going to win. But this was done in such an interesting way where they didn't really feel supernatural like Clint does when he enters the frame. Like it just felt like two brothers honestly shooting at each other. It just seemed very earnest. I don't know.
I think that also helped because you saw how easily the gun switched hands throughout the films. Mm-hmm. I mean, through the film, and it's such a upsetting look at things because I keep bringing up the morality of this film because I think it's just so brilliantly handled. It is a landscape for anyone to be who they want to be, really, and everyone's wearing a gray hat in this film. Some people have a much darker shade of gray.
I think the Indian Trader is one of the better examples of that,
exactly.
too, right? Yeah.
John McIntyre, always a fabulous character actor, yeah.
Oh, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie is with him in the bar where he takes all his money.
Yeah.
That's incredible. If you've seen the film, that makes more sense, oh gosh, that's fantastic. So was he cheating?
Of course he was cheating.
Yeah, of course he was. That's what I love about it. He's like obviously cheating.
Yeah.
The guy's got aces, a full house of aces and eights, and loses. This is hilarious. Oh gosh, that was, and of course it's aces and eights.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna screw with some guy, make it a dead man's hand.
Yeah.
That was so funny. Do you have a favorite part in the movie, Johnny, that we haven't mentioned?
You know, one of my favorite scenes what we're talking about right then, where John McIntyre cheats Stephen McNally out of the money and the gun and wins everything, and then Stephen goes for his own gun, and then the bartender, the owner, he pulls out the shotgun and says, "You hadn't ought to have done that, Dutch, and
yes.
You know a decent joint here." But the focus on that, you see the barrel of the shotgun, and it's out of focus, and then you see him in focus, and it's just a wonderful cinematography bit there where because a lot of this movie is shot with very intense depth of field where everything's almost in focus, and here you get a little different there, and I just love it. So it's a minor point. I mean, it's not even that very big of a scene, but I kind of love that scene there.
Yeah, it was my favorite in the movie as well. And the bartender was always back there, watching too. And then when he pulls out the gun, it does feel like, whoa, okay, this is. And I love that it's sort of the way events always escalate in westerns. Like it's always something so trivial, and then a few minutes later, we're about to blow each other's heads off. Like as soon as he walks up to play cards with this guy, I'm like, oh, this isn't going to end well. This is not going to end well for anybody.
And there is that. It's not exactly foreboding sense, but there's always a feel that the violence is around the corner, because I love that scene, and this is the moment where I saw Jimmy Stewart the most as a soldier, when they're waiting for the Indians to arrive in the morning. Mm-hmm. They're not going to fight at night. We know this. So they're kind of just basically waiting for the battle. And the calmness of Jimmy Stewart, but also the determination that's going to happen. And it's brilliant. And to kind of be with those people and then to say where they were in the war previously for that.
Right.
Yeah, and it gives him sort of it gives Jimmy sort of an opportunity to actually you get to see his prowess. You get to see how capable he is really in that scene, because not just as like a gunfighter, but also as a tactician. Because he comes in there, he knows the land, he educates them on what to do. He's the one that says shoot the chief, take the chief out. The other ones will sort of fade away. And then you end up finding out that he fought on the other side.
Yeah.
So I thought that was just really interesting too. Also, the way the Indians are sort of done when they're out at night and they know that they're among them. That was, I thought, really effective too. It's just like sort of this more of a threat that extended past the conflict of the film, which is getting the gun back. Mm-hmm. It gave a better sense of scope and time and place that I thought worked to great effect as well.
Although I always kind of question that when they come down into the camp and J.C. Flippins, the big sergeant leading a bunch of green recruits in the army camp, they've just been chased by Indians, and he goes, "Get ready, they might attack at night." And Jimmy says, "No, night? They're not going to attack at night." And I always say, "Well, wait a minute, weren't they just chasing you into the camp?"
I thought about that too. I did think about that while I was watching the film, and I sort of because it's kind of hard not to. But the way I kind of went with it was maybe he literally just walked right past them, so they kind of had to. But that was the way I kind of went at it. Because
that's a good argument.
Because I assume that they're afraid of a night raid, maybe too. Of course, they know they have them outnumbered, but I don't know. I did think about that in the film though. He's so confident when he says it too.
Yeah. I know. You say, okay, I'll buy it. It's Jimmy. He's not going to lie to us.
So the story of the female in this movie, because I'm always interested in the way sort of females are depicted in westerns. They're very there's a huge spectrum there. I love that Jimmy gave her a gun.
Oh sure.
I thought that was really really kind of neat because she'd been asking for it earlier and she gets one. Everyone falls in love, I feel like, really quickly in westerns. usually you just need a pretty girl and then hero, and then they can just be in love. But they actually gave her her own story as well too. She's
upsetting too.
Yeah, it is. Also, I know I've been talking over you.
No.
But I was just saying, like, I thought that was a really cool story as well too, because it gave her sort of an anchor in the plot. She has someone that she's with, and then when the Indians come, the person she's with turns yellow and sort of flees and sort of leaves her behind, which I couldn't believe that happened. I was like, wait, what are you doing? And it was like, did that really happen? That needs to be commented on. And then he ends up getting killed as well. So, I don't know. I thought that was interesting that she actually had her own story, her backstory arc. I thought it was really, really good.
It's Shelley Winters. It's an early Shelley Winters. And, she's pretty, she holds her own. She's kind of playing the Claire Trevor character from Stagecoach and all the other B-West. She's the dance hall girl, high prostitute who's run out of town and then has to kind of, everybody here has a backstory. It might be a small backstory, but all the people that the gun goes through or the gun comes close to, they all have these different little stories. It kind of makes it much more of a human movie.
Yeah, that's the point I was making. Is like I probably didn't do it very well, but what I just liked is for something that is a very simple movie, we're following this thing. Let's get back this thing. Every character had their own. They resisted archetypes because they actually filled in the blanks that I might have had about who they are and where they came from.
Oh, so, sure.
It did a good job of explaining everyone, so I knew what everyone brought to the table by the end of the film.
Yeah. As you talk about Kevin heard the gun, I actually just thought back to the film Red River, where I forget the character's name, but when she was kind of right there with the battle scene. As we start to wrap up, Johnny, I want to really ask you about your novel, Return to Red River. What was that like? I mean, this is a classic novel, a classic movie.
It's one that Austin covered on his podcast.
Yeah, the other one I did.
Yeah, the other one he does.
But what was that like? What was the expectation like to cover this classic terrain?
It was a challenge. I mean, my editor at Kensington Books came up with the idea. He said, "Can you do a sequel to Red River, the Borden Chase novel that became the movie?" The original title of the novel was something like, when it appeared in the Saturday Evening Post, was "Blazing Guns on the Chisholm Trail."
Yep.
So Howard Hawks said, that's not going to fit on the marquee. We're going to call it Red River. But the novel had gone out of copyright, so it was fair game. And there are major differences between the novel and the movie, as in most cases. But I said, well, that's kind of a challenge, and it was kind of a difficult novel to write. So I just took the Matthew Garth character, it's played by Montgomery Clift in the movie. I just moved in my head 20 years later, and he has to make a major cattle drive back to Kansas to save the ranch and save his legacy. But it's difficult because they're not your characters. So these aren't people you've come up with. These are characters that were come up with in the 1940s. And the 40s, the mentality of the 1940s, like I said, in the Westerns has changed a lot over the past, 70 years. So the struggle is, how do you be faithful to Borden Chase's vision and try to make something your own. So it was a tough novel to write, but I think from mostly what I've heard, people seem to like it.
Now, here's the impossible question: would you ever want to cover the characters from Winchester 73 years later? You're wondering about what was happening to him after this.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'll have to talk to my editor and see, your legal department on that, see if the copyright fell out of that one.
Yeah. That's interesting. So the Red River book it's much different. So that must have presented an interesting challenge as well, writing a sequel to a book that was turned into a beloved movie that's different.
Yeah, and people know the movie more than they know the book. So, so they're going to read it. What do you mean? That didn't happen. Well, yeah, it did. Because I'm not going to be sued by the Howard Hawks and John Wayne and Estates and United Artists.
Always a good plan.
Yeah, I think I spend my whole life trying to avoid that.
Yeah. So I have the original novel because it actually comes with the Criterion set now for Red River. The paperback comes with it.
Yeah.
Which
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. It's really cool.
I love Criterion.
I know. And unfortunately, we now have to wrap it up. Johnny, where can we find you online and where can we find your books?
The website is johnnydboggs.com. You can go to your local bookstore. If they don't have them, I'm sure they'd be happy to order them. And you can even try the Evil Empire, Amazon.com or Mark.com too. But I always say support your local bookstore first, or go to your public library. I mean, most of them that's free. Read one. If you like it, fine. If you don't, I'm a writer. I can take bad reviews.
Austin has always had sort of a rule. Anytime we go into a local bookstore, he has to buy a book.
Yeah, it has to happen.
He spent a lot of time working at a bookstore, so he knows all too well about the Evil Empire. So.
All right. I love independent bookstores, and I love readers a lot more than I love writers. So.
Eric, where else can we find you?
You can check me out at constantdiversion.com. That's my own little review thing there. And constantdiversion.com. The YouTube channel is Constant Diversion. So.
Yeah. And as for me and for this show, you can go to theartimmortal.com. You can leave a comment on this thread for this episode. If you have any thoughts you have about Anthony Mann, Jimmy Stewart, and Winchester 73, we'd love to hear it. And you can also send us an email if you're too shy to have a public forum. You can email us at letstake5@theartimmortal.com. Follow us on Twitter at @TheImmortalsPod. And you can follow, we now have 2 other podcasts on the podcasting network. The Immortals is the podcast I do with 4 friends where we review the 1001 movies, albums, food, songs, children's books, and TV shows that you must consume before you die. Yesterday's episode, we covered the film Drugstore Cowboy, which is not a Western. It just sounds like it. And the brand new podcast that actually just launched a couple days ago is a legal podcast hosted by Sarah of the Immortals fame and 2 other lawyers, where they are 3 lawyers who look at a fictional product and talk about what law has to happen in it for it to make sense. So in the first episode, they covered Minority Report and talked all about the 4th Amendment, the 8th Amendment, and why those spiders can't have tasers. So that podcast is called Ad Absurdum. Check both of those out on iTunes and theartmore.com. And that wraps it up for episode 33 of Let's Take 5. Johnny, once again, thank you so much for joining us.
This was my pleasure. I very much enjoyed it.
A real treat. And we'll all be checking out your books, and we'll all check you out next week when we are reviewing Harvey.
Yeah, we'll see you then.
So goodbye, everyone.
All righty. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Seems they knew all about your Springfields being single shot.
You mean they had repeaters?
Yeah. Only this time we just might outfox them.
On account of we got 2 Winchesters.
To 7 people, this gun was a magnet, a treasure, a weapon that promised life and dealt out death. For this saga of the West, Universal International has assembled a matchless cast. James Stewart, whose personal feud led to one of the grimmest manhunts ever filmed.